As descendants of Africans who were brought to the Caribbean during the slave trade, our ancestors were seen as less than human and were not given opportunities for personal development and economic empowerment. Well, two central pillars of the season of emancipation are education and economic empowerment so that we can enjoy a comfortable standard of living in Barbados. In this episode of Reimagining the Past, Celebrating the Future, we will learn of a competition which has as its goals the provision of opportunities for Barbadian entrepreneurs to be granted funding for their projects and for all contestants to be informed of the contributions of a powerful Black activist, the late Marcus Garvey. Welcome to Reimagining the Past, Celebrating the Future. I'm Rashid Best. Thanks for joining us. In promoting our African heritage and providing that enabling environment for entrepreneurs, in 2023, the Division of Culture organized the Marcus Garvey Entrepreneurship Pitch. Participation in this competition meant that entrepreneurs had the opportunity to receive grant funding, which is pivotal to their success. Minister in the Prime Minister's Office with responsibility for culture, Senator Dr. Chantal Munro-Knight, places this competition in perspective.
On May 1st of 2023, this year, the government, along with the social partnership, announced Missions Barbados. Mission Barbados was about 6 missions that prioritized critical areas of focus and sought to establish what would be the development pathway for Barbados from now until 2030. Mission Barbados particularly was undergirded by the tenets of one, that we would create a safe society, one that provided for the necessities of our citizens, but most of all, one that would address the fundamental inequities and disenfranchisement that still pervaded the society. The intent of that Mission Barbados, principally, is to be able to develop and establish a society that repudiates that notion that there is a section of people within our society who will always be deemed to either underachieve, be deemed to be seen as less than. It was about establishing a society in which we were able to now create, an environment for entrepreneurship, innovation, and most of all, for feeling of ownership within this society. And it was in this context that we have that overarching mission of Barbados. And then we have this Marcus Garvey Entrepreneurship Pitch, which was founded also as well within the season of emancipation under the theme, Reimagining the Past, Celebrating the Future. All of those things connected. In particular, the Marcus Garvey Entrepreneurship Pitch builds on the legacy of course, Marcus Garvey, an important legacy. We know of Marcus Garvey, particularly some see him or know of him in relation to his philosophy for Black nationalism and also Pan-Africanism. But Marcus Garvey was foremost a businessman, yeah?
And Marcus Garvey is a hero, not only to the Jamaican people or to Black people globally, but a hero to the Barbadian people. And if you go back to the Barbados of the 1920s and 1930s, virtually every single important Black public man or woman in Barbados was either a member of Garvey's organization or was substantially influenced and inspired by Marcus Garvey and his movement. And central to that Garvey movement was the idea of Black economic self-reliance, Black entrepreneurship.
And Marcus Garvey, in his own sense, represented economic empowerment, and particularly economic empowerment for Black people. And, you know, Barbados have moved through 50-something years of independence now, almost 2 years of Republican status. And therefore, that sense of moving from enslavement through emancipation, through colonialism, through independence, economic empowerment for blacks is an important discussion for us in this 2020 year, 2023 onward. And therefore, we felt that, you know, it is one of the significant things that we needed to highlight within the season of emancipation. And recognizing that we celebrate the season of emancipation also within the context of republicanism. And therefore, that sense, ongoing sense of freedom and independence and a certain sense of who we are as Barbadian people is important. And that ownership of your own economic space is one of the things that is important in the discussion. So, no, we felt, and then the Prime Minister said to us straight, you know, we have to go into communities, we have to be able to build out that sense of social capital to move people away from that dependence on the state, understanding that, you know, there's space for Barbadian people to own businesses and become, you know, their own guardians of their own fate, you know. So, yeah, so for that reason, you know, grounded in that ideology, you know, we felt that Marcus Garvey was important to, and because he went here too, he visited Barbados. You know, he did that famous speech at the steel shed. So, you know, he was part of our moving forward as a nation state.
So the Garvey movement is noted for establishing factories. You know, Garvey had the Universal Factories Corporation, establishing the Black Star Line, which was a steamship company. Back in the 1920s, a steamship company in the 1920s is what an airline, a major airline company would be today. So Garvey preached that message of black economic self-reliance and entrepreneurship, collective entrepreneurship to our people. And of course, those are values that we would wish to instill in our people. The value of entrepreneurship, valuing it and striving to deliver it. And so I'm so pleased that we have now built this into our season of emancipation, and that we are going to anchor it in the historical example of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And I think that we owe it to ourselves to explore the extent to which Marcus Garvey and Garveyism were rooted in Barbados. And if we take the time to do that investigation, we will recognize that Marcus Garvey was so central to the struggle and the progress of Barbados that he could virtually be considered a national hero of Barbados.
His philosophy of enfranchisement, of social entrepreneurship, was also as well mission-driven. It was not just about developing businesses for blacks, but it was about developing businesses that led to something, enfranchisement, community-based businesses that will build wealth, but also confidence that we could achieve. And that was something that was sorely needed in the context of which Marcus Garvey launched his Universal Negro Achievement Association in 1916. That was the context of a society then that was driven by race and a deliberate attempt to ensure that the blacks did not achieve and succeed and did not have ownership. I would suggest today that even though we are here in 2023, that is still a cause that we have to fight. That overcoming that is still a task that we have in front of us. And as I said, Mission Barbados fundamentally seeks to do that. And this entrepreneurship pitch was about developing a plank and a space in which we could provide, particularly for creatives, to exercise that potential, but also as well, importantly, as I said in relation to Marcus Garvey, create an atmosphere in which you would develop a project that was not just for you, but benefit for community and also as well at the national level.
When I thought about the entrepreneurial and while it wasn't clear the type of projects they were looking for in terms of submissions, when I analyzed it, but if this is a season of emancipation, and we are talking culture. Well, they didn't say it. I thought, well, you must be looking for culturally relevant projects to fund. And when I looked at my own project that I was proposing to put forward, I thought, but my project is culturally relevant. I'm telling the story of my own family, and I'm telling the story of individuals and Barbadian families. People are an important part of culture. Family traditions, family stories are an important part of our culture. And I'm attempting to preserve that via my documentary filming. So with that in mind, I said, you know what, my project is relevant and I think I should submit, because if this is being pitched during the season of emancipation and this is all part of culture, well, I don't know what the others are pitching, but at least if only but for that, culturally relevant, well, let me submit. So said, so done. And as I thought about it more, I want to say firstly, thank you to the government of Barbados, the Ministry of Culture, for facilitating this Marcus Garvey pitch competition. By organizing this competition, the ministry has acknowledged we need to empower our people to start culturally relevant entrepreneurial businesses. And if you're going to empower them, we need to allow them access to grant funding. And this essentially was what the top prizes have been, grant funding.
The importance of the documentation and preservation of our cultural heritage is central for the transfer of information to future generations. This provides them with the foundation to truly understand and appreciate who they are. Documentary producer Carcine Greenidge is a prize winner of the competition. He spoke of his love for capturing information for future generations.
What that simply means is I'm into the practice of capturing the stories today via audiovisual formats for access tomorrow by future generations who may not have been around at the time that the content, but that content could be in video, could be in photos. They may not have been around at the time that I captured the content. But the story must be told and should be told of our present for access and reference by our future. So I love engaging with people. I love asking questions, because by asking questions, that's how I find out. I observe. My specific interest in, well, one of my specific interests in documentary filming is linked to family history research. I've developed over the last few years a deep interest in my own family's existence in Barbados and how I came to be as a Greenidge with roots in Barbados. I knew very little about my Bajan ancestry. And there was an occasion in 2018 where my Greenidge family had a family reunion. And that family reunion did it. That influenced me to begin the research into my own Greenidge family. Because as I was chatting with my other relatives, Guyanese, and as conversations about my grandfather came up, I never truly had any meaningful interactions with my grandfather. He was a Barbadian who migrated to Guyana in the early 1920s. He was about 24, 25, and he was a laborer. And he migrated to Guyana. He found a Guyanese wife, had all his children over here. He never returned to Barbados. Over the years, as a child, I kept hearing these conversations. And as a young boy, I wasn't really paying any attention. Well, he's my grandfather, he's dead now. I mean, it was a big deal. But as I became older and my interest in social history intensified, I then became even more curious about my heritage, my ancestry, and this man about whom my relatives often speak. And as I began to ask questions, but there's always a point in the conversations beyond which I can't go because the information is not there. The family has not gathered the, because remember we're Guyanese, not knowing much about our grandfather, my father's father, who was Barbadian, and when he left Barbados, he left all his Greenwich family in Barbados. So he died in Guyana. He never really told much stories about the Barbadian experience. So the family that he created in Guyana is now left to really discover on their own who are our relatives that grandfather left. And my father and his brothers, when they migrated, they made an attempt to discover who grandfather's brothers and other Greenwich relatives, but they found it a bit challenging and they weren't getting anywhere. And in the early 1990s, they just stopped. To my disadvantage, because then I am lacking of that knowledge about my past. And there wasn't anybody else in the family who became as curious and as inquisitive as I became about my grandfather. So in 2018, these conversations were having an conversation about, because the family reunion of Guyanese, my Greenwich family, who came over from Guyana, some are living in the US, some are living in Canada, we decided, you know what, linking with each other is important. And to facilitate this physical linking, let's have a family reunion. And that decision was made. So we toyed about where are we going to meet? Should we meet in Guyana? Should we meet in the US? Should we meet in Canada? Should we meet in Barbados? But we thought, you know, how fitting it would be to meet in our grandfather's, my father's father, in his birthland. Because this is where it all started. It was because of grandfather that we all came to be. So the decision to have that family reunion in 2018 became a reality. And for me, as I look back, that was a significant defining moment in my search and discovery for my grandfather and the relatives that he left. And I said to myself, you know what? There is some information that's missing. Somebody needs to go out and start searching. And I took that responsibility on myself. It will start with me because I am sufficiently curious. And so it did. And coincidentally, around that time, after the family reunion ended, the BTMI, in collaboration with the Barbados Archives Department, had launched what continues today as a genealogy marketplace. So the family, and then advertisement in the media occurred, genealogy marketplace, come and search for your family history. And I did. And I have never left the Archives Department since then. So the Archives Department played an important role in getting me to where I am today with the knowledge about my grandfather. And I will say this before I pause, is because of the information and the assistance that I got at the Archives Department, I today, unlike in 2018, I knew only of, well, the family knew only of one sibling, a likely second of grandfather. His name was Edward Greenwich. My grandfather's name was Edward Greenwich. The family could have identified one sibling quite clearly, the elder of the siblings, Christopher Greenwich, Christopher McLennan Greenwich. He was the eldest of the children. But there were others, and they were unable to identify them by name. This is 2023. I'm happy to report that as a result of my research, as a result of my questioning, my probing, my going out and looking, physically looking, you're my blood relative. I'm pleased to meet you. I am happy to report, Rashi, that today I have names placed against persons who are my grandfather's siblings. That for me is success, because I came from a position of ignorance to know today a position of knowledge.
I think it is important that we understand the why of what it is that we do, because the why is what connects us. This year, when we launched Decision of Emancipation, one of the fundamental things that we said as a division was that it wasn't about just doing activity. It wasn't just about doing things and having this pitch, but firmly grounding the understanding of the why, the fundamental need to transform who we are as a people. And that is important. And it's one of the reasons why, as part of this ceremony, we will be giving out to all of the participants books on the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, because it's important to understand, again, the genesis. I believe very fundamentally that when we understand what drives us, when we understand what drives the development of a thing, then it creates a deeper resonance that then can then unleash a greater power and a greater passion for what it is that we do. In the context of the continued rollout of this initiative, I am looking forward to greater partnerships with the private sector. There is, as I said, a battle and a challenge that is at hand. And that is one that doesn't just belong to the government, it belongs to all of us as a society, and more critically as well, the private sector. So similarly, as we've had the Barbados Chamber of Commerce come along with us, we're hoping that under that umbrella, that more organizations, more companies will come forward to be able to mentor as part, but also as well to put tangible resources, and I make no apology, behind the pitch as well. The intent is that we create a space where we put money behind our creatives, yeah? We are intent on building out a creative economy, and we must then capacitate our creatives in order to be able to deliver, and very tangibly, they need resources in order to do so. One of the things, certainly, that I was very, very, very firm about was that we would have a pitch that actually gave people money in their hand. Yeah? Very often, we sometimes shy away, or we don't believe that we can manage money, that we are worthy of being given the big prizes. And the vision for this is that we can have people who will walk away, if necessary, with $1 million to support their vision and their initiative, because the creators in this country deserve it. The creators in this country deserve it. Recent statistics from the University of West Indies suggest that the creative economy, post-COVID, has grown by 14%, or is growing by 14% annually. 14%. When we think of the creative sector, when we think of crop over, when we think of the festivals and everything that we do, we think of the moment. But we don't think about how the creative industry supports so many other businesses, supports the growth of so many other types of initiatives. And that is the value and the strength of the creative sector. And we sought to honor this in the context of this entrepreneurship pitch by making sure, like I said before, that we would support initiatives, new and innovative initiatives that will highlight their creativity and then have multiple benefits as well. I want to say 3 things as I close in terms of, like I said, the future for this initiative. One, we are intent, again, on embedding the why. So outside of handing out books, I am hoping that as part of the pitch as we roll it out, that we will have specific sessions on the philosophy of Marcus Garvey. That is the why, yeah? So that we need to be able to embed that within the design. Secondly, as well, while this pitch was open to everyone, I think that we need to make a more concerted effort to target perhaps some younger people or a younger cohort. And certainly one of the things that I will be asking the committee that is managing the development of this within the division is to look to the extent to which we can partner with other agencies that are doing entrepreneurship pitches or competitions targeted at younger people to see then how the division can either partner or perhaps we need to build something on our own. Because certainly the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, when it was about generational wealth, generational knowledge, building generational confidence, we also have to make sure that we do that within this context. The third thing as well, as I said, is about scale. We were able, and thanks to the National Cultural Foundation, they worked, and we're very happy, I would say on the behalf of the CEO of the National Culture Foundation, to provide out of their grant funding the portion of funds that we are providing to the participants here. But like I said, I'm hoping that by next year, we'll be even to scale that, even to double that, because like I said, it's important that we put our money where our mouth is. And finally, as well, in terms of partnerships, we've partnered, yes, with the Chamber of Commerce, but I believe also as well the Youth Entrepreneurship Scheme as well was also a critical partners. And we want to be able to build out that partnership that surrounds this initiative as well, not only in the context of mentorship, but we want to be able to monitor where these projects and initiatives go over the long term. We want to be able to see the success. We want to be able to walk with them, and we want to be able to see them scale. And so, for instance, export Barbados, because that's the longer term vision. Can we export these initiatives? Help you to move beyond Barbados to the region, to the world, globally. And whatever that means, we are intent on making sure that we build that ecosystem around you in order to be able to deliver on that.
Minister Monroe Knight recognizing the global economic space and the many opportunities that exist for our people. This has been Reimagining the Past, Celebrating the Future. I'm Rashid Best. Thanks for your time.